Imagine a land where your ancestors have lived for centuries, a place where your people's history, culture, and spirit are intertwined with every tree, river, and every mountain. Now imagine that land being taken from you by force, by deception, and by law. This is the reality faced by Native American nations in the 1800s, as they were displaced from their homes, their lives, and their legacies. The Iroquoian-speaking Seneca Nation inhabited the fragmented territories throughout New York. The Seneca's territory stretched from Genesee's River to Canandaigua Lake. Then, in the 17th century, expanded along the Allegheny River into Pennsylvania. These Seneca communities were in modern-day Schuyler, Toga, Kemington, Tompkins, and Cayuga counties within the state of New York. The 1800s marked a period of immense pressure on the Seneca. Displaced from their ancestral lands by broken treaties and land grabs, orchestrated by companies like Ogden Land Company, the Seneca found themselves increasingly marginalized. The shadow of the Indian Removal Act loomed large, further fueling settlers' fear and prejudice.
The indigenous experience of white settler colonialism here, or really anywhere in the Americas, would have been one experienced through violence. And not just direct sort of militaristic violence, but cultural violence too, the erasure of lifeways. There's a long history of residential schools in Pennsylvania, for example.
A shadow fell over the Seneca with the arrival of the Ogden Land Company. This company claimed to have purchased all remaining Seneca lands in the Genesee's Valley, threatening the heart of their territory. Greed fueled Ogden Land Company to push further and claim the Buffalo Creek, Tonawanda, and Cattaraugus territories after. President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act in 1830. Though this legislator did not outright target the Seneca in New York, its implications were clear. The government's policies aimed to effectively remove Native Americans from their ancestral lands throughout Appalachia and open them to settlers. The relentless injustices perpetrated by the Ogden Land Company and the U.S. government reached a breaking point. The Seneca were forced to cede the remaining land in the region, leaving them virtually homeless by 1842, with only 1 square mile of uninhabitable land left in their name. The Compromise of 1842 offered a glimmer of hope by returning the Allegheny and Cattaraugus lands to the Seneca. However, this small victory couldn't erase the trauma of displacement, the internal divisions fueled by settler influence, and pressed threat of further land grabs.
And this American way of being was more valued than any kind of indigenous identity. And that would have been internalized by the indigenous communities here in ways that led to violent outcomes, abuse, any number of things, including the kind of alcohol abuse that I think we've seen documented in the Sam Mohawk story. So violence would be the word that comes to mind, but also betrayal of trust throughout.
It was against this backdrop of displacement and cultural upheaval that the tragic events of July 1st, 1843 unfolded. Sam Mohawk, a Seneca man struggling with the demons of alcoholism and the weight of his people's suffering, committed an unthinkable act of violence against the Wigton family near Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania.
He is charged with killing the children, and then Margaret, the wife of James Wigton, who the Wigton family was very dominant in the Brady Township and the Slippery Rock Township area, heading up Route 8 North, right in the area above the Old Stone House. And he was charged with killing the kids, the infant, and I think there's 3 or 4 middle to early girls, all from the single digits up to like around maybe the age 9 or 10 or 11, and then the wife as well. Very early morning, probably about an hour before dawn, somewhere around that time. And then he was tracked going across the Slippery Rock Creek and getting into at least one engagement, maybe more, with the Kennedy family and some other families that had some kids out along the Slippery Rock Creek. He didn't have a gun or anything. He was throwing rocks, which kind of sounds strange, but he hit one of the Kennedy boys with it. I think his age was 10. And I have that boy getting taken, I think, into Slippery Rock, which was called Centerville at the time, to a doctor. But then there's no report of what happened to the boy afterwards. And then he's caught late morning or early afternoon at the Philip Keister house in Slippery Rock as well, and then brought back into town by a large group of people.
Mohawk's crime cannot be seen as an isolated act of violence, but as a tragic manifestation of the broader tensions between Native Americans and settlers, fueled by years of displacement, broken promises, and cultural misunderstanding. As news of the massacre spread, fear and outrage gripped the community. The brutal nature of Mohawk's crime shocked settlers, reinforcing stereotypes, further straining already tenuous relations between Native Americans and settlers in Butler County. Mohawk was found guilty on 6 counts of murder by a jury of 17 local Butler County settlers and sentenced to death despite his plea of insanity. Although he was found guilty, questions remain about the fairness of the legal processing and whether his cultural background and historical context were adequately considered. Mohawk's execution on March 22, 1844, marked Butler's first death penalty case. His case is a darker chapter in Seneca history in the region, and is one that these descendants and locals can neither condone nor forget. However, Mohawk's crimes serve as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of displacement and the importance of preserving historical Seneca culture in the face of adversity.
I think it's a combination of 2 very bad experiences, either on his side or on the wife's side of his 2 wives, because he has this dire hatred of women, and he's always mentioning women, and he's very upset with women. So something is in him, some psychosis, and I definitely think he's got a mental instability. And I think that delirium tremors or tremens is a major part of it. When he was coming down from the reservation, all the people that testified, from the taverns, the hotels, the farmers that were outside that he ran into, he was seeking alcohol everywhere. And a couple people placated him with milk or a little bit of water, but he didn't want that. And many times it was, I think one guy had to chase him away with an axe, and then other people, it was at the Kerr Tavern in Venango, had to tell him to go away. The day before at the Old Stone House, which I think at the time was run by John Sill, he said he had to kick him out because he wanted served. And so everybody knew there were major alcohol problems. And I think, not that I have done intensive research on this, but my own personal doctor and the other 1 or 2 doctors I've talked to said you could completely be delusional if you're that alcoholic and you're not able to get the alcohol and you're used to it. And I think it's known Native American culture throughout all of the United States that there has always been an issue with alcohol.
In the aftermath of the Wigton Massacre and Mohawk's execution, the Seneca Nation faced increased scrutiny and discrimination. Yet, they persevered, holding on to their traditions and fighting for their rights, in a world that seemed determined to erase them.
For a while, there was this sense of how to handle this for, I think, modern historians on, is the only reason he's executed because the guy's a Native American. The only thing you can find is secondary sources saying things along the lines of, and you never saw a Native American come through again, or, quote, Indians avoided coming through Butler. But there's no more talk of anybody from those rafting coming through anymore. And I think they're scared to death. I couldn't imagine, nor would I have an idea, being a Seneca after that incident, And I mean, if it's possible to racially or ethnically profile today, it sure as hell was in 1843.
Sam Mohawk's story is not just a tale of crime and punishment. It is a reflection of the deeper wounds inflicted upon the Seneca people. His life, struggles, and ultimate fate are bound to a history of displacement, betrayal, and cultural erasure. The legacy of the Wigton family massacre and Sam Mohawk forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths about our shared history. It calls on the voices of those who have been silenced for too long and questions the systems that perpetuate injustice. All by acknowledging the past, we can hope to build a future rooted in understanding, respect, and equality. The trail may be stained with blood, but it is also marked by resilience. The question remains, will we continue to walk blindly down paths paved with injustice, or will we forge a new trail altogether?